On Kirill 3, no one made eye contact in the mist. The acid haze that draped the world wasn't just toxic, it was intimate, creeping into lungs, clothes, even thoughts. It clung to you like guilt, and in a place like this, there was plenty of that to go around. The towers of the southern industrial district rose like rusted bones from the cracked concrete. They groaned under the weight of machinery that never slept. Lights flickered half-heartedly through grime-streaked panels, casting cold blue glows that bled into the fog. Everything here was old. Everything here was dying, except the system. The system never stopped. An Eli cavern moved through it like a ghost. His boots clanged softly on the metal walkway, a lonely rhythm swallowed quickly by the omnipresent hum of extraction engines. Above, drones zipped between scaffoldings, scanning, reporting, watching. Cameras nested in the corners like silent vultures. No one looked up anymore. No one wanted to be seen. He was returning from an overtime repair. Yet another coolant regulator on Subline 32 had failed. It didn't matter. Nothing ever changed. Workers patched holes, replaced rot, kept the decay from collapsing too quickly. That was their job. Keep the dead machine breathing. Keep the wheels turning. Keep your head down. Eli wasn't exceptional. A systems technician third grade, he was one of thousands, nameless, faceless, replaceable. And he preferred that way. Visibility invited questions. Questions invited attention. And attention, on Kirill 3, got people disappeared. He was halfway across the freight corridor, breath misting through his rebreather, when he saw her. At first, he thought it was trash. A bundle of cloth tossed on the steps of the cargo bay's south exit, like someone had abandoned a sack of dirty laundry. But something was wrong with the shape. Too still. Too human. He stopped. The form shifted. A shudder ran through it, small and pitiful. Then a hand moved, thin, shaking, curling inward like it no longer believed in reaching out. She was young, barely more than a girl. Her skin, beneath the filth, was an eerie green, a hue not native to any documented species that lived or worked in the city sectors. Her long black hair clung to her face in damp strands, and her cheeks were hollow, sharp. Her lips were cracked, and her breath came in short, painful gasps. But it was her eyes that broke him. Large, luminous, violet like a bruise, and completely, utterly empty. Not with death, with starvation. He'd seen hunger before, on worker transports, in the slums outside the dome sectors. But this wasn't just hunger. This was a slow execution by neglect. A death not by violence, but by a world that simply didn't care. She was crying. No sound, just tears slipping silently down her cheeks, cutting pale trails through the grime. Something tightened in his chest. He hadn't felt that in years. Not since. No. He pushed the memory away. He looked around. No movement, just the dull groan of machinery. No guards, no patrols, yet. The security tower scanner was pointed toward the east wall, at least for now. Still, cameras saw everything. Drones recorded everything. He should have walked away. Just another poor soul. Not his responsibility. But he didn't. Eli moved quickly, pulling his coat off. The lining was warm, triple layered. He draped it around her shoulders, and she flinched but didn't resist. Her hands were ice. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quietly. "Can you walk?" She looked up at him, and for a heartbeat he thought she might try to speak. But instead, she simply stared, defeated, waiting to be left again. He sighed, reached down, and lifted her into his arms. She weighed nothing. A handful of bones wrapped in trembling skin. She didn't cry out. Just let her head fall against his shoulder, breath rasping against his neck. He moved fast, took the back paths, service tunnels under the old piping grid, out of sight of surface monitors. The reek of oil and chemical exhaust filled the air. He knew this route, knew where the blind spots were. Every step, he expected a siren, a red flash, an alarm. But the city kept humming, oblivious. His unit was tucked behind a scrap recycler on level D12. Just another worker pod. Gray walls. One cot. One heater. One recycled air system that wheezed like an old man in winter. He laid her gently on the cot, pulled a thermal blanket over her. She didn't move. just closed her eyes and exhaled, slow, broken, like a machine running out of power. He stared at her for a long time. Then he locked the door, turned off the panel light, and sank to the floor. What the hell was he doing? This wasn't some bleeding heart moment. He wasn't a hero. He'd lived through enough to know better. You helped someone on Kirill 3, you paid for it. But he couldn't walk away. Not after that look. Not after the soundless way she'd cried. Not after seeing her in those eyes. The next day passed in shadows. He stayed home, claiming a tech fatigue protocol. No one questioned it. He had credits saved, and the supervisors were too overworked to care. She didn't wake until the second evening. He was sitting at the small table, working on a damaged sensor coil, when she stirred. A quiet rustle. He turned. She sat up slowly, his coat still wrapped around her like armor. Her gaze flitted across the room. She looked like she might bolt. "It's all right," Eli said softly. "You're safe here." She blinked, watched him for a long moment. Then, with a hoarse, barely audible voice, she spoke. "Sarah." He set the coil down. "That your name?" A small nod. He smiled. It felt foreign on his face. "I'm Eli." Silence again, but less tense now. He stood, poured a cup of warm synth broth, and held it out. She stared at it as if it might vanish, then took it with both hands. Her fingers trembled, but she didn't spill a drop. When she finished, she pulled her knees to her chest and rested her chin on them. Her eyes didn't leave him. "You got people?" he asked. She shook her head. He hesitated. "Are you running from something?" No answer, but the way her eyes darkened said enough. He didn't press. Didn't need to. Whatever had brought her here had nearly killed her. She didn't need more questions. Just time. That night, she fell asleep near the heater, curled up like a child. Eli stayed up, pretending to work, but really just watching her chest rise and fall. She was alive. That meant something. When he finally lay down, he felt different. Not lighter, not better, but less numb. He didn't know who Ciro was, or why she'd ended up half dead in the cargo bay. He didn't know what danger might follow her, or what rules he'd just broken. But he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't go back. Something had shifted inside him. He wasn't just a technician anymore. He was a man who'd saved a life, and he wasn't going to let the world take it from him. Not again. Morning on Kirill 3 came without sunrise. The sky was a dull, acidic gray, the same color it had been for years. There was no weather here, just the constant drift of chemical mist and the low mechanical hum that never slept. The world outside Eli's unit remained indifferent, like always. But inside, something fragile was beginning to shift. He sat on the edge of his workbench, sipping from a dented metal cup. The synthetic coffee tasted like copper, but it was hot, and that was enough. Across the room, Sarah slept curled beneath his coat, still and small. Her breathing had steadied overnight, but it was shallow, as if her lungs hadn't quite decided if they wanted to keep trying. Eli didn't know what to expect when she woke. Fear? Panic? Silence again? He wasn't sure what scared him more, that she'd lash out, or that she wouldn't speak at all. But when her eyes opened, slow and blinking against the stale light, she didn't run. She looked at him. He nodded once. "Morning." Sarah said nothing, just blinked, pulling the coat tighter around herself. She looked cleaner in the dim light, if only slightly. The grime still clung to her skin like a second layer, and her tangled hair framed her face in thick, oily strands. But her eyes were clearer now, less hollow. There was life in them again. "You hungry?" he asked. She hesitated, then gave the slightest nod. Eli got up and moved toward the cupboard, pulling out a food pack and a canister of heat-activated broth. It wasn't much, just powdered nutrients and chemically flavored starch, but it was what he had. He poured the mixture into a tin bowl and set it in the warmer. As the machine hummed softly, he glanced over his shoulder. She was sitting up now, legs folded beneath her, watching him carefully. He brought the bowl to her and crouched, holding it out with both hands. "It's not fancy, but it'll help." She reached slowly, fingers brushing his as she took it. Her skin was cold, but no longer clammy. She held the bowl close, and for a moment, just inhaled the steam. Then she ate, small bites, cautious and quick, like she was afraid it would be taken away. Eli didn't speak. He just watched her, careful not to stare too long. The way her shoulders relaxed after Every swallow told him enough. She hadn't eaten in days, maybe longer. When the bowl was empty, she lowered it gently to the floor. Her eyes flicked to his again, uncertain. He offered a small smile. "You're welcome." She didn't smile back, but she didn't look away either. After a pause, he stood and scratched at the back of his neck. "There's a shower unit in the back. It's not much, but it works." Syrah tilted her head, confused. He gestured toward the short hallway near the sleeping alcove. "You could clean up if you want. Warm water. I'll find you something clean to wear." Still she hesitated. He could see it in her, distrust, the instinct to protect herself. Whatever life she'd come from hadn't left room for safety. "You don't have to," he added quickly. "Just figured you might feel better." For a long moment, nothing. Then slowly she stood. The coat slipped from her shoulders, and he caught a glimpse of the layers beneath, cloth barely holding together, stained and worn. Her green skin was marked by thin, healed scars along her arms. Not new, not fresh. The kind of damage that came from long suffering, not violence. Neglect more than cruelty. Eli turned away and stepped into the hallway, giving her space. "There's soap in the panel. Water controls on the right. I'll be out here if you need anything." The door hissed shut behind her. He sat down again, fidgeting with the tools on his bench. His fingers found a twisted coil, but his thoughts weren't on repairs. They were with her. Syrah. Who was she? Where had she come from? Why had she been alone, collapsed on cold steel, like she'd fallen out of existence? He didn't ask. Not yet. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was careful, like glass stretched too thin. The water ran for a long time. When she emerged, steam billowed into the room. Her hair was wet, but it fell smoother now, long and black like strands of obsidian. Her skin was clean, revealing the soft glow that shimmered faintly beneath the green, like starlight seen through clouds. She wore one of his old shirts, too large but warm. It hung off her shoulders, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She'd found the utility pants he'd set aside and pulled the drawstring tight at the waist. She looked less fragile, still thin, still wary. But something had changed. He looked up, meeting her eyes. "Feel better?" She gave a small nod, almost imperceptible. He picked up a packet from the table and held it out. "Tea. Sort of. Tastes like moss, but it's warm." She took it, fingers brushing his again. Her hands were steadier now. They sat in silence for a while. Syrah on the edge of the cot, Eli back at his workbench, pretending to tinker. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft, unpracticed. "Why?" He looked up. "Why what? Why did you help me?" He didn't answer right away. The question had lingered in his own mind all night. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Guess. I saw someone who needed help." She studied him. Her gaze wasn't sharp, but it was heavy. Eli sighed. "Years ago, I watched someone die. Someone close. And I couldn't stop it. Couldn't do anything. I told myself, if it ever happened again, I'd be different." He looked away. So maybe this was me trying. Syrah didn't speak again, but she didn't need to. That night, she didn't sleep by the heater. She laid down on the cot. When he turned off the light, she reached for his hand beneath the blanket. Just lightly. Just once. He let her hold it. And for the first time in years, he didn't dream about the boy he couldn't save. He dreamed of a girl with star skin and violet eyes who cried without sound. And this time, he didn't look away. The third morning arrived with a faint tremor. It came not from the earth. Kirill 3 didn't quake anymore, but from the weight of a world stretching just a little too thin, like something buried beneath the steel crust had finally begun to shift. Eli woke to the sound of boiling water and the gentle rattle of a spoon against metal. It was a sound that didn't belong in his life. Not in this place, not in this century. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. But when he opened his eyes, the cot was empty. Syrah stood in front of the heating unit, steam rising from a small tin cup. She wore the same oversized shirt and utility pants, rolled and tied at her waist. Her long black hair hung damp and wild down her back, strands clinging to the nape of her neck. The skin of her arms caught the weak morning light, casting a faint green shimmer that was almost too delicate for this world. She turned as he sat up, her expression unreadable. Then, without a word, She walked over and offered him the cup. He blinked. You made tea? She gave a slow nod, her gaze drifting toward the heater again. Eli accepted it, careful not to let his fingers brush hers. The cup was warm. The taste, sharp and bitter, dried root boiled just long enough to be tolerable. But it was perfect. I didn't know we had tea, he said, mostly to himself. Her voice came soft, nearly a whisper. Found it. Back of the cabinet. He looked at her, really looked. There was color in her face now. Her shoulders no longer sagged with exhaustion. Something in her had started to return, piece by piece. You're feeling better, he said. She nodded again. A little. That was all. No elaboration, no backstory. Just enough to say she wasn't dying anymore. And somehow, in that moment, it was enough. They shared a quiet breakfast, dry ration bread, rehydrated fruit, another round of root tea. Conversation was still minimal, but the silence between them had shifted. It wasn't filled with fear or hesitation anymore. It was comfortable, like two people quietly learning how to breathe in the same rhythm. Afterward, Eli returned to his workbench. The coil from yesterday still sat half open. He didn't really need it anymore. It had been for a side job, something he'd taken to earn extra credits for a non-existent future. But the routine helped. Sierra wandered through the small space. She didn't ask questions, didn't pry. But she touched things gently. A screwdriver, a spool of wire, a rusted piece of a pressure valve. She examined them like they were relics, not tools. You know what that is? He asked when she paused over a stripped power cell. She looked at him with something between amusement and offense. Recharge buffer, she said. But yours is cracked. Won't hold. Eli blinked. Yeah, that's right. I can fix it. It wasn't a question, and she didn't wait for permission. She took the cell, found a cutter from the toolkit, and started working. He watched her, trying not to seem too surprised. Her hands moved with precision, slow, steady, sure. Her fingers were long, delicate, but calloused in places only someone who'd worked with real systems would have. She didn't guess. She knew. You've done this before, he said. Yes. He waited. She didn't add more. Still, it sparked something, curiosity, admiration, maybe even something deeper, something he wasn't ready to name yet. When she finished, she handed the cell back without ceremony. Try now. He connected it to the panel and flipped the switch. The light blinked green. Eli smiled. That's the first thing in this room that's worked right in a week. Sarah didn't smile back, but her eyes flickered with something like satisfaction. Hours passed. The day outside stretched on, indistinguishable from the one before. But inside, things were different. Sarah stayed close, not in a way that invaded his space, but near enough to feel real. Like she was choosing to be here now, not just surviving in the warmth. She drew, too, found a bit of charred wire, and started sketching shapes on scraps of packaging. Stars, mostly. Spirals. Dots connected by imaginary lines. Some he recognized from old constellation maps. Others he didn't. Where are these from? He asked. She hesitated. Home. Eli paused. What was it like? Sarah didn't look up. Her voice barely carried. Quiet. Cold sky. Everything moved slow. We listened. To what? To each other. The words lingered in the air. He didn't press her. It was the most she'd shared yet. Later that night, as he powered down the console, he caught her watching him. What? He asked gently. She tilted her head. You don't ask many questions. He shrugged. You don't offer many answers. A long pause. Then why not? Because I don't want to push you away. That made her go quiet again, but not in the way that closed doors. It was the kind of silence that said, I'm thinking about that. They sat together in the low glow of the heater. Sierra rested her back against the wall, her knees drawn up, hands folded in her lap. She looked tired but not weak. And then, out of nowhere, her voice broke the quiet again. People don't do that. Not here. Eli raised a brow. Do what? Wait. He didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything. Eventually, she spoke again. My kind we feel too much. That's what they say. They called it a defect. So we think with the wrong parts of ourselves. Eli turned to her. So they left you behind? Her jaw tensed. I was inconvenient. It made him want to break something. Not for her, not to impress her, but because the idea that someone like her had been discarded like spare parts made something in his chest burn. "You're not a defect," he said. She looked at him, startled. "You're just real," he continued. "More real than anyone I've met in a long time." Sarah didn't respond, but her gaze softened just a little. She reached forward, fingers barely grazing his wrist. Not an accident, not a mistake. And Eli didn't pull away. They stayed like that for a long time, connected by silence, by understanding, by the subtle gravity that pulled two lost things toward each other. And outside, the mist thickened, curling against the windows like it knew something had changed. Because it had. The heater clicked once, then again, as it struggled to maintain warmth against the creeping cold that lived inside the walls. Kirill, 3 didn't get colder, not in any technical sense. Temperature was controlled, regulated, processed, but somehow the cold still found a way in. It was the kind of cold that sank into bones, settled behind eyes, and whispered truths that were best left buried. Eli woke to silence. Not the absence of sound, but that precise kind of quiet that made you feel like the world was waiting to inhale. The cot was empty. He sat up quickly, heart thudding. The air in the room tasted wrong, too still, too heavy. He scanned the shadows. Sarah was on the floor, curled tightly near the far wall, knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped around her head. Her whole body trembled, not from cold, but from something far deeper. Her breath came in short, choked gasps. Eli was beside her before he even realized he'd moved. "Sarah," he whispered. "Hey, you're safe. You're here. It's okay." She didn't respond. Her eyes were open, but unfocused. She didn't see him. He reached out slowly, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. She flinched hard, her whole frame recoiling like she'd been burned. He froze, then softened his touch, his voice. "It's Eli. Just me. You're not there anymore. You're here." She blinked. Once. Twice. Then, finally, her eyes met his. Recognition flickered. A breath caught, and she collapsed against him. Not like someone seeking comfort, but like someone whose body had finally let go after holding too much for too long. Her forehead pressed to his chest, hands fisting into his shirt, and the tremors racking her body slowed, bit by bit, breath by breath. Eli said nothing. He didn't ask. He didn't prod. He just held her, steady and warm, and let her come back to herself. It took a long time. When she finally pulled away, her face was pale and damp, her violet eyes ringed with exhaustion. She didn't speak right away. "Do you want water?" he asked gently. She nodded. He helped her sit up, then stood to fetch the canister. He poured it carefully into a small ceramic cup, the one with the chipped rim she always picked for herself. She took it with both hands and drank slowly, almost reverently. Then she set the cup down, looked at him, and said something he hadn't expected to hear. "I'll tell you." Eli didn't move. He waited. Sarah stared at the wall. Her fingers traced invisible patterns into the blanket draped over her legs. "I was born on a moon called Navara," she said. "We weren't many, maybe a few thousand scattered across the mountains. We didn't build much, just what we needed. Stone shelters, sky mirrors, root gardens. Our world was small but quiet, beautiful." Her voice was steady now, low and calm like a stream flowing through rocks. "We listened mostly. That's what we did. To the sky, to the wind, to each other. Silence wasn't empty where I came from. It was sacred. We could hear things in it, truths, emotions, things people didn't know how to say out loud." She paused, eyes narrowing slightly. They didn't like that. The ones who came later. Offworlders. Corporates. They started digging, building towers, melting the ground for metal. They said they'd leave us be, that we were culturally protected. A bitter smile touched her lips. They lied. Eli clenched his jaw. He didn't speak. He let her go on. "My people didn't fight. We didn't know how. We tried to adapt. We let them build, let them pave over our fields. We offered help, shared what we knew. But some of us started to change." She looked down at her hands, turning them over slowly as if surprised they were still there. "I was young, too young to understand. But I felt everything. All the emotions around me. Fear, anger, grief. They poured into me. It was like my skin had no walls. Eli's brow furrowed. You mean empathic? More than that, she said softly. I could feel what others refused to. Things they buried. I absorbed them, carried them. She exhaled, long and slow. They said I was too sensitive, that I made people uncomfortable, that I destabilized group harmony. So they sent me away. Not far, just to a distant facility, one of the research centers the corporations ran. They said it was for my own safety. Her voice cracked slightly. But I know what exile feels like, even when they use soft words. Eli's heart ached. And Kirill, 3? I escaped, she said. I stole a service passcode, hid in a freight crate. I didn't even know where it was going. Just wanted to be gone. I thought maybe, if I was far enough away, I could stop feeling everyone else. She looked up at him then. But you don't stop. You just go numb. He didn't realize he'd reached for her hand until he felt her fingers curl around his. Sierra blinked. I wasn't supposed to survive here. I didn't expect to. But you did, he said quietly. You're here. I'm still here because of you. Eli shook his head slowly. You're here because you kept breathing. That was all you. They sat like that in silence, hand in hand, the only sound the quiet hum of the recycled air. Eventually, she leaned her head against his shoulder. Sometimes I forget how warm another person can be, she whispered. It's all my body forgot. Eli swallowed the lump rising in his throat. Mine too. Outside, the mist thickened, pressing against the narrow window like an unwelcome visitor. And still they sat, wrapped not in heat, but in something far rarer on Kirill 3. Trust. That night, the dynamic shifted again. Not in some grand gesture, not in sudden declarations or dramatics, but in the quiet way Sierra reached for his hand without hesitating. In the way she smiled, just slightly, when he offered her tea. In the way she told him before falling asleep, if you want, I could teach you how to listen. To what? He asked. She looked at him like the answer was obvious. To the spaces between. The wind had teeth tonight. It whistled through the crawler's ventilation slats like a living thing, gnawing at the metal skin, testing for weaknesses. Eli sat in the pilot's seat, one hand on the ignition, the other resting on his thigh. They had stopped just beyond the jagged fields, where the dunes curled around the wreckage of the planet's early colonization days like sand-swallowing bones. Behind him, Sierra slept lightly in the makeshift cot they had built from tarp and netting. Even in rest, her body stayed curled, knees drawn close, one hand open beside her chest like she was holding something fragile. She always slept like that. Eli didn't know what nightmares chased her, but he recognized the look. It was the same one he had seen in the mirror for too many years, when dreams were less about monsters and more about what you couldn't save. A soft beep drew his attention. He turned toward the dash. The signal scanner flickered once, then again. A thin spike, barely there. He leaned in, adjusted the gain. Still nothing. Then, another pulse. Too clean, too symmetrical, not natural. Eli's gut tensed. He reached for the auxiliary monitor, patching into the crawler's old sensor suite. The feed was grainy and slow, held together with rust and prayer, but it still worked. He rotated the external camera toward the northern quadrant. At first, nothing but static. Then movement, a soft shimmer against the wind-blown haze. Almost like heat distortion, but more deliberate, angular, cloaking. He froze. Someone, or something, was tracking him. Before he could react, he heard a shift from behind. Sierra stirred, sitting up slowly. Her eyes locked on him instantly, like she had felt the change in the air before even waking. What is it? She asked, voice still husky from sleep. He didn't lie. Something's out there. Her expression didn't change, but her posture did. Alert. Still. Her fingers curled around the edge of the cot. Can you feel it? He asked. She nodded. It's not just a drone. It's watching, but not looking. Eli didn't ask what that meant. He trusted her instincts, now more than the readings in front of him. He powered down the external lights. We need to move. Sierra stood and crossed the cabin, barefoot, silent. She pressed her hand against the side panel. We're being measured, she whispered. What? They're not just scanning. They're deciding whether to strike, whether to wait. Eli's blood chilled. Orcs. She looked at him. Her violet eyes were calm, but unreadable. Something like them. They packed in minutes. No wasted motion. They didn't speak much, but they didn't need to. They moved like people who had already planned this 1,000 times in their heads. As Eli checked the crawler's systems, Sarah leaned out the narrow side hatch and stared into the darkness. She didn't blink. "I know this silence," she said. Eli turned. "From where?" "From a holding station. Before they took me off-world. It's the same quiet that came before the doctors spoke. Before they told me I wasn't mine anymore." He stood beside her, close enough to feel the tension in her shoulders. "They'll take it all," she said. "Not just data, not just memory. They'll take who you thought you were." Eli placed a hand on her back. "I won't let them." She looked at him. "You don't know what you're saying." "I do." He turned her gently to face him. "Because once a long time ago, I didn't stop them. I had a sister. She got marked for relocation during the early cycles. We were told it was for safety. I let her go. I trusted the system. I never saw her again." Sarah didn't speak, but her fingers brushed his wrist. A simple gesture, but full of gravity. "Then don't let them take me," she said quietly. "I won't." They set off again, quietly, cautiously. The crawler skirted the edge of the salvage basin, navigating through rusted towers and long-dead machines. Eli kept the power low, the heat signature minimal. The signal spikes continued, irregular now, as if their hunter was circling, learning, waiting. Sarah sat beside him, one hand on the window, the other holding the folded cloth where she kept her small metal carvings. She pulled one out, a spiral. "What's that one?" Eli asked. "A path without edges," she said. "It leads inward, not forward." He nodded. "That's how this feels sometimes. Like we're going deeper into something we can't name." She smiled faintly. "But we're not lost." The crawler's lights flickered, just once. Eli's eyes snapped to the readouts. Pulse feedback. Something nearby. He turned the crawler sharply, entering the narrow corridor between two half-collapsed transmission pylons. That's when he saw it. Not a drone. Not a human. Something in between. A figure cloaked in adaptive armor. Face blank. Eyes pale and glowing softly. The insignia on its shoulder, a red-lined circle. Orcs. But not a normal agent. "Proxy," Eli whispered. The figure raised one hand, not an attack, but as a greeting. "Eli Cavern." A voice echoed, mechanical but eerily calm. "You are in possession of unauthorized biointelligence." Sarah, tense beside him. "You are ordered to surrender the subject for reclamation." Eli's grip on the throttle tightened. "Not a chance." The proxy took a step forward. "Resistance will lead to nullification." "I've been nullified before," Eli growled. "Didn't take." And then, without hesitation, he fired the crawler's pulse cannon. The shot struck the tower behind the proxy, causing a cascade of sparks and debris to rain down. Not a kill shot, a distraction. "Hold on," he shouted, slamming the accelerator. The crawler lurched forward. Sarah braced herself, clutching the frame as they tore through the debris, kicking up a storm of rust and wire. Behind them, the proxy gave chase. They didn't speak as they raced across the open basin, but their hands found each other, clasped tightly between gear shifts and heartbeat spikes. Eli glanced at her once. She was smiling, not in joy, in defiance. The crawler's engine screamed beneath them as they veered off the main path and into a collapsed subgrid, a field of buried fiber and rusted data conduits that hadn't pulsed with power in years. The terrain was uneven, cracked, a minefield of forgotten infrastructure. But it offered something precious. No surveillance. Eli slowed as they dipped below the level of the main ridge. The wind above them thinned, replaced by the stillness of the basin floor. Crumbled slabs of ferrocrete rose like tombstones around them, and the echoes of the chase faded behind layers of silence. He cut the engine. They sat in darkness. Only the faint glow of the crawler's auxiliary panel illuminated their faces. Sarah still glowing faintly green in the low light, her dark eyes wide, searching. "I think we lost it," Eli whispered. "No," she replied. "It let us go." Eli's brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" Sarah reached forward and placed her hand against the dash. Her palm trembled slightly. "They're not trying to catch me," she said. They're trying to understand me. Eli exhaled. That's somehow worse. She nodded. For a long moment, they sat in silence again, the engine still ticking with residual heat, the air thick with adrenaline and unsaid things. Then Cirrus said, I felt him. Who? The proxy. Not his thoughts. Not like I usually feel. I felt a pocket of absence. A place where a person used to be. Her voice grew softer, vulnerable. He used to be someone. Eli turned to her. They took that from him? Yes, she said. And I think they want to do the same to me. Eli reached across the console and took her hand. She flinched, but didn't pull away. His touch was rough, warm, real. It anchored her. They won't, he said firmly. I won't let them. Her eyes met his. Why? He paused. And then he said it, not as a confession, not as an outburst, but as the only truth that mattered anymore. Because I love you. Sarah blinked. For a second, she didn't breathe. She studied his face like she was memorizing it, like she didn't quite believe it could belong to someone who saw her not as a threat, not as a ghost, but as something worth choosing. Then, slowly, her lips parted. I've never heard that word used like this, she said. Eli smiled softly. How have you heard it? As control, as devotion, as sacrifice, never as choice. He leaned in slightly. Then let this be your first. She reached for his face, her fingers tentative but steady. Her palm rested against his cheek, and her thumb brushed the line of his jaw. Then she kissed him, gently, like opening a memory. It wasn't a kiss born of desperation. It didn't ask for rescue. It didn't beg for salvation. It was a promise that she was still here, that she still could love, and that he was the reason she remembered how. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his, eyes closed, breaths mingling. I don't know what happens next, she said. Neither do I, he replied. But we'll face it, she murmured together. Outside, the wind softened. The signal noise faded. They weren't safe yet, but they had found something more powerful than safety. Each other. And that was enough for now. The wind had shifted again. Eli noticed it first. Not in the way the crawler rocked or the cold bit harder, but in how Cirrus stopped speaking mid-sentence and tilted her head toward the ridge. She stood in the open hatch, her eyes fixed on the pale arc of the sky above the valley, shoulders drawn, every line of her body taut with a knowing that had no logical source. But every time he had trusted it, it had been right. They're coming, she said. Eli didn't ask how. He trusted her now more than he trusted his instruments. He stepped beside her, watching the horizon. How many? One, she replied. He frowned. Just one. Sarah's fingers curled slightly. One is enough. She stepped back inside the shelter, moving to the satchel where she kept her memory medal. Those little sculptures she had made along the way, each one a piece of her rebuilding self. Her hands hovered over them now, like she was saying goodbye. Are we running again? She asked. Eli shook his head. No. Why not? Because this isn't the part where we run. This is the part where we make a stand. Sarah looked at him, something flickering behind her eyes. You're not afraid? She asked. I am, he said, but I'm more afraid of what I'll become if I let them take you. The words hung in the air, heavier than the weapons he was loading into his belt. The rifle, the charge baton, a single ion mine he had kept buried under the floorboard. Sarah stepped closer. I don't want you to die for me. I'm not planning to. But if you do, Eli smiled faintly. Then I'll die knowing I finally did the right thing. She reached for his hand. No, if you die, I'll follow. He froze. She meant it. You're not a weapon, Sarah, he said, voice quiet. She shook her head. No, but I am dangerous. And it's time I stopped being afraid of that. He didn't argue. He simply leaned in and kissed her again, quick but meaningful. A seal. A vow. Then they waited. The proxy arrived just after sunset. He stepped into the clearing like a shadow made flesh, the last light of day gleaming off the matte black of his armor. His face was unchanged, expressionless, synthetic. But his eyes weren't just cold. They were empty. Unauthorized biointelligence identified, he said. Surrender requested. Eli stepped forward, rifle steady. No, the proxy didn't move. Resistance will result in full suppression. We're not afraid of you, Cirrus said. For the first time, the proxy turned his head slightly, toward her. You are the product of experimental empathy breach. Your designation is unstable. You carry unauthorized memories and corrupted emotional profiles. I carry truth, Sarah replied, and you're afraid of it. She stepped forward slowly. Eli tried to reach for her arm, but she held up a hand. I have to do this, she said. He let her go. Sarah walked into the open, unarmed, unshielded. You were someone once, she said to the proxy. I don't know your name, but I can feel what's left of it deep down. You will be reabsorbed, he said. Your presence compromises unit coherence. No, she said. It reminds you of something you were forced to forget. She stopped a few feet from him. Then she reached out. Eli's breath caught. The proxy didn't raise his weapon. Instead, his head twitched, just slightly. Sarah's fingers hovered near his temple. And then, gently, she touched him. A pulse of light, not visible, but felt, rippled through the air. The proxy jerked. He staggered back, a hand clutching his head. And for the first time, he screamed. It wasn't mechanical. It was human. Memories, long buried, surfaced in fragments, flashes of a child's drawing, the sound of laughter, the feel of a breeze that wasn't manufactured. Then silence. The proxy collapsed to one knee. He looked up at her, and the synthetic mask cracked. Not physically, but emotionally. My name, he whispered. It was Dayran. Sarah knelt beside him. You were not meant to be forgotten, she said. You were meant to remember. He closed his eyes. Then he stood, unsteady, but different. He turned to Eli. She's more dangerous than you realize, he said, because she gives back what we thought we could erase. Then he looked to Sarah. I don't know what I am now, but I won't report this. He walked away, just like that. No shots fired, no explosion, no blood, just choice. When he was gone, Sarah nearly collapsed. Eli ran to her, caught her before she hit the ground. She was trembling, not from pain, from release. You did it, he whispered. She smiled weakly. I remembered who I was, and I gave it away, and it didn't destroy me. He held her tighter. It made you whole. They sat there, under the stars that were just now beginning to pierce the haze. And for the first time in years, Sarah cried. Not from fear, not from grief, but from the sheer, overwhelming relief of being allowed to be. And Eli held her as long as she needed. Later that night, as the valley slept around them and peace settled over the earth like mist, Sarah touched his face again and whispered the words she hadn't dared to speak before. I love you. And Eli, smiling, kissed her forehead and whispered back, I loved you from the moment I saw you. I just didn't know what it meant yet. They lay together, arms entangled, hearts steady. Not hiding, not running, living. The wind still moved through the valley, but it no longer howled. It sang, low and warm. It rustled the leaves of the trees that had taken root along the ridge, their canopies casting shade over the garden beds where fruit now grew alongside the wild moss and memory flowers Sarah had once planted with trembling hands. The shelter had expanded, no longer a simple structure of salvaged tarp and bent metal. It had walls now, windows, a small chimney that puffed gentle spirals of steam into the pale sky each morning. Solar plates had been arranged like petals on the slope above, and the purifier hummed quietly beside the stream, fed by a copper pipe Eli had forged and placed by hand. A home, not a hiding place, not a shelter from war, just a home. From the open doorway, Eli stepped into the light, stretching his arms overhead, his shirt loose and soft with wear. There were streaks of gray in his beard now, sun lines around his eyes. But he stood tall, steady, the kind of strength that didn't need to declare itself. He turned at the sound of footsteps, bare feet padding across the wooden floor. Sarah emerged behind him, wrapped in a deep green shawl. Her hair was longer now, woven with soft cords and beads of copper. A smear of soil ran along her cheekbone, and her eyes sparkled with the kind of peace only time and choice could bring. In her arms was a child, not human, not Nivhar, theirs. The girl had Eli's dark hair, Sarah's violet eyes, and a smile that didn't belong to either of them because it had come from freedom. She wanted to help plant, Sarah said, lifting the girl to her hip. She always does, Eli replied, reaching out to stroke her hair. She has your touch. Syrah raised a brow. She has your stubbornness. The child giggled and buried her face in Syrah's shoulder. Eli leaned in and kissed them both, first Syrah's forehead, then the top of the girl's head. I still can't believe this is real, he said. Syrah looked up at him. You should. We built it. He nodded, then glanced to the edge of the garden, where a polished sculpture stood, a small memorial they had made together. Two hands, palms open to the sky, holding a fragile shape between them. The sculpture had no plaque, no name, just presence. It was for the ones they couldn't bring with them, the ones who hadn't escaped, the ones still trapped inside systems that didn't understand what it meant to feel. Syrah followed his gaze. They'll come again someday, she said. People like us, broken things, escaping things. Eli nodded. And we'll be ready. We'll welcome them, she said. He turned back to her and kissed her softly. Still love you, he murmured. Her smile was immediate. Still love you. The child squirmed and laughed again. Let's show her how to plant, Syrah said. So they did, together, as they always had.